relating to states that benefit from federal tax dollars. And this first graph shows you that federal aid as a percentage of state general revenue. Okay. And one of the things that you want to look at is the percentage of the overall dollars that a state spends that come from the federal government. And so, like, for example, West Virginia, let's say we spent, just if we spent $1 this year, then 37 cents out of that dollar is coming from the federal government, meaning that we're the 12th most dependent state percentage-wise on federal dollars, okay? And then you look at a lot of other states, for example, Mississippi, God love them, they're the #1 most dependent state in terms of federal revenue for their budget, right? So they're getting a lot of tax dollars. We're getting a lot of tax dollars. Now, a couple other things that are relevant too. Taxes paid by each state. This is in billions of dollars. California is putting into the federal government every year $234 billion in federal taxes, business, income, etc. Okay? So they're putting in a crap ton of money, and they're not the ones necessarily benefiting from it. Even more, this little graphic's even better because here's what they're showing you. They added up the amount of tax dollars that a state puts into the federal system and then subtracted the amount that they get in terms of state grants, other projects, et cetera, and they divided it by the number of citizens in a state to tell you how many federal dollars a state gets per resident. And the darker the blue, the more they get. West Virginia, for instance, $7,283 from the federal government per resident. That's pretty high. Not as high as Virginia, though, $10,301 federal tax dollars that benefit those residents per resident. Okay, so ballpark, think of it as you, individual, the federal government spends $7,000 on West Virginia because you exist here. That's adorable. Now, sure.
So, just from what I saw really quick, the states that got a lot of government money, they're also Republican states. Is there any correlation?
Correlation, maybe, but we'll go back to that in just a second. I'll show you something else. Connecticut, minus $4,000 per resident. Right? What that means is they're putting way more money into the system than their people are drawing out. Right? You look at other states like Massachusetts, okay, minus $2,300. You go to California, it's $12 per resident. Right? Meaning that they are barely breaking even when it comes to this. They're putting in $230 billion, and that's probably what they're getting out of it. And so they're like, hey, we're just at a break-even point, whereas states like West Virginia are already benefiting from federal programs. Okay? You guys, yesterday in your discussion question, you're like, why should Joe Manchin not try to leverage the Senate for more stuff and more money and special projects? All right? What would somebody from Connecticut say about that? Not fair, because they said, look, you states are already sucking up most of the federal money and you don't put much money into it. Right? People from states like this with a negative amount per resident, right? They would be upset. And they're like, hey, you guys, you states like West Virginia, Virginia, and Kentucky, basically all of Appalachia, you guys are benefiting already. And now Joe Manchin's going to hold the Senate hostage for more money? It's kind of jacked up. And you guys are like, absolutely. This is an opportunity that doesn't come along every day. We should exploit it. But this is how other states view us. By the way, West Virginia also, I think it's interesting that a lot of West Virginians take the attitude that I don't need the federal government to tell me what to do or the federal government to help me do this. Yet, what seems to be clear by the statistics? Who is helping them? The federal government. It's a little bit ironic. Oh, that's adorable. Okay, now let's move along and talk about congressional leadership a little bit. We had specifically mentioned congressional leadership in the House, but we hadn't finished up the House. We hadn't talked about the Rules Committee, I don't think. Somebody can correct me on that if I have. I don't think they did. Okay, so we hadn't talked about the Rules Committee. All right, we talked about Speaker of the House. Somebody remind me, what's one significant power the Speaker of the House holds? They get to decide who talks for how long. Give me another one, Moses. The overall agenda and the daily agenda are up to them. What else? One other thing specifically we mentioned, which actually encompasses two things. They determine committee assignments and who the committee chairs are going to be. Nancy Pelosi, powerful lady. Okay? Now, they have the party leaders, the party whips. Party whips are there to maintain party discipline. The Rules Committee is one particular committee that is extra powerful. All right? Here's why. Any bill that goes to the House of Representatives, okay, goes through the House of Representatives, before it gets to the floor for debate, it has to go to the Rules Committee. And the Rules Committee does two things. The Rules Committee is going to do two things. One, they determine the overall number of minutes that a bill is going to be debated. They determine the overall number of minutes that a bill is going to be debated. Right? Which can slow down or speed up the process. Right? If we want a bill to be over and done with and to move it along quickly, then we can just say, look, there's going to be 5 minutes on this bill for debate and that's it. If it's something we want to go on for a little bit longer, we can schedule it for an hour, maybe 2 if we're really lucky. But remember, most bills don't get more than 15, 20 minutes tops. Okay? But more importantly, the Rules Committee determines if a bill will have open or closed rules on the floor. Okay? And that's a big deal. Open rules is dangerous. Here's why. Open rules means that any member of the House during debate can propose amendments to the bill. Right? Open rules means anybody in the House, any of the 435 members can propose amendments. So let's say we're debating the COVID relief bill. We're already spending $1.9 trillion, and Congressman Rydell says, I'd like to propose an amendment onto this bill. It will be a bill that, an amendment that will add $10 million in spending for a monument to the Trump presidency. Right? How are Democrats going to be taking that amendment? Not very well. Okay? The Republicans will be like, that's a good idea. Right? Regardless of whether or not you think it's a good idea, we have to consider his amendment. Okay? And then the whole House would either vote it up or down. Just the amendment, not the bill itself. Okay? So the whole House, since it's the Democratic majority, they would vote down his amendment and they'd be like, okay, we have to determine if anybody else has an amendment to offer. And then Deal has an amendment. Now, what do you think this does to the amount of time that it lengthens the process? And if there are open rules on a bill, you better be ready for a marathon. Okay? Because proposing amendments doesn't cut into debate time. So you may have something only scheduled for 30 minutes of debate, but everybody's got an amendment proposal because they always want a pork project of some kind. Open rules, you better be there for like 6 hours. Right? And you're probably going to mutter cuss words under your breath. Closed rules, it's a little bit better. Okay? If there's closed rules on a bill, only people from the original committee can offer amendments. Only people from the original committee could offer any amendments. Right? This COVID relief bill started with the Appropriations Committee. So the only people that could offer any amendments would be people from the Appropriations Committee. And usually they're pretty satisfied with the bill they sent to the floor, so they're probably not going to do it. That makes the process go a lot more quickly. Right? Being on the Rules Committee, super important. If you're the chair of the Rules Committee, you're an important figure. Okay, let's move over to the Senate, man. Already talked about the party whips. Senate's a little bit different. The structure is mostly the same, but slightly different. Leadership in the Senate. Technically, there's the president of the Senate. Okay? The president of the Senate is actually the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris. Oh, there we go. She's the president of the Senate. Being president of the Senate doesn't really do much, though. If she wanted to, she could come down and preside over the Senate every single day, but that would be boring because debate there, remember, it's like unlimited and she's got other stuff to do. All right. So Kamala Harris isn't going to show up at the Senate unless there's a tie vote. Her only job in the Senate is to break tie votes. So if there's a tie vote on a bill, which is going to end up happening quite a bit because it's a 50-50 balance right now, Kamala Harris will come down and break the tie. That's her job. That's it. Being president of the Senate, usually not a big deal. Right? Since the president of the Senate doesn't come down there unless there's a tie vote that needs to be broken, they have a president pro tempore. Get another Latin term. President for the time being or for the moment. Okay? A temporary president, if you will. This is a ceremonial type of job. There's not really any real responsibilities. Patrick Leahy from Vermont is the president pro tem of the Senate. Usually they just give it to the senior most member of the majority party. Pat Leahy's been around for eons. That's actually a very nice picture of him. He's a little on in his years. In fact, he had to be hospitalized the other day because he's getting a little old. Right? Apparently it was just a precaution. That's what they always say right before they die. Right? Now, the only cool thing about being president pro tempore is you're in the line of succession. Like it's president, vice president, speaker of the House, and then president pro tempore. So if Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris all died, shortly within one another, he would be the president. Nothing to worry about with President Leahy in charge. All right? It's never gotten that far in the line of succession, so don't worry. Okay? Now, President pro tempore, he could preside over the Senate if he wanted to. Okay? But that's grunt work, and nobody wants to do it. And when you're really old in an organization, who do you make do the grunt work? What is it? The younger people, new guys. So he's like, hey, new guy, come over here and preside over the Senate. New guy's like, I don't know how. And he goes, well, you better learn. All right? It's a good way to learn the rules of the Senate. Okay? Now, here's where things get tricky. All right? Don't forget this. The most important position in the Senate, the most powerful position, is the Senate Majority Leader. Okay? The Senate Majority Leader is the most powerful position within the Senate. They have the powers similar to what the Speaker has over in the House. Currently, and you got to know this figure, Chuck Schumer, the new Majority Leader of the Senate. Is that picture a little creepy? I'd say so. I mean, that's a big forehead. It's like a 5 head, really. What is it? Yeah, but it's kind of creepy looking. All right. Chuck Schumer, currently the Senate Majority Leader. He controls the agenda. He controls which bills are going to come before the Senate, which ones won't. He schedules votes, controls committee chairs and committee assignments. He's the man. And if you don't think that they have the ability to affect this, Mitch McConnell, who was the former Senate Majority Leader, when he was in charge and President Obama had 9 months left in his presidency, and Majority Leader McConnell said, there's an opening on the Supreme Court and President Obama's appointed somebody, but we're not going to give that person a vote in the Senate because the Senate has to confirm them. And he said, we're not going to let that happen. But what do you think he did when Donald Trump got to appoint Supreme Court justices? You think he expedited the process? Question.
You said that he pretty much has the same powers as the Speaker of the House.
All right. So he controls the agenda. What's going to happen? Amy Coney Barrett, a Supreme Court justice, literally, like when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, Amy Coney Barrett was appointed, had a hearing, and was confirmed within 2 weeks. It was a pretty fast process because Republicans wanted to get it done before the election ended. All right. Being Majority Leader, a big deal. The Minority Leader, currently, we just mentioned him, Mitch McConnell. Oh, Mitch. Right, that's actually a very generous picture of him. If you've seen Mitch McConnell, especially in recent years, he has there's a very awkward comparison that people have of him. He's the turtle man. I can't help it. There's got to be a likeness. Right? If you Google image search Mitch McConnell, turtle starts coming up. I can't help it. Majority and minority leader, as minority party leader, McConnell has to try to work with the majority leader and get something done for his party. And right now, McConnell's found himself in a tough spot because Democrats, now that they have a majority, want to change Senate rules to end the filibuster. And one of the things they want to do now is, like yesterday, they barely passed the budget, a budget bill on the spending relief, the COVID relief, 1.9 trillion in spending, where the Democrats didn't do any budging. Republicans wanted to only spend 600 billion, a third of that, and Democrats are like, there'll be no negotiations. And Mitch McConnell's like, well, why not? And Democrats are basically like, well, you did this to us for the last 10 years, so payback stinks. Yikes. Party whips. You don't need to remember the party whips in the Senate, but people always ask who they are. Currently, John Thune and Richard Durbin are the party whips. They have the same job in the House: maintain party discipline, count the votes, lean on whoever we got to lean on. If Paul is not going to vote the way we want, we try to incentivize getting him to vote a particular way. We offer him something. But then if he still doesn't want to do that, we threaten him. Know your place, Paul. All right? That's your Senate leadership structure right there. Okay? Now, a good place for us to stop there, and we're going to look at some practice AP questions now.